Good evening. I believe we are live. Tonight is January the 30th, and we are live on the action group Stop the Schools, the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill page, and on the Home Education Action Group, as well as on our YouTube channel. We will be talking tonight on the most important thing, because this past Wednesday in the House of Lords, the amendments that the section of the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill that was discussed is the section that pertains to home education and the Children Not in School register. So I've got Randall on here with me this evening, so that we can look at what those amendments are. We will be looking at the most important ones, and we are not going through the bill as it was before the amendments. Okay, we are just going to highlight what has been passed in the House of Lords. So all of the other stuff that was in the bill originally, it will have been amended, and that's what we are discussing. So if we take a look here, Randall, we're looking at the page of Fiona Nicholson. And she has a page called Ed Yourself, and we can recommend going to Fiona's page if you want a clearly laid out description of things. And this is her page from the 11th of January, I believe, her blog post, Randall. So we're going to take a look at some of those. Do you want to say anything by way of introduction, though?
Very quickly, I think this was actually the day after the government amendments were published, the 8th. I think this one, Juliet. I think she's probably updated it, but she may not have got everything there. But the first thing, just to remind people that when the government put amendments into a bill, it's very unlikely they're going to be rejected. Right. And even if they got rejected in the House of Lords, they could probably be put forward in one form or another back in the Commons. So I had no expectation that these amendments would be thrown out, just like I had no expectation that the majority of amendments put forward by individual peers last Wednesday would be accepted. We had one exception, which we'll come to it later, but that wasn't just a rank and file member of the Lords, it was this spokesperson for the opposition. So Fiona on this page gives you the headlines. You can look up the things there. She hopefully just doesn't tell you there. She gives you a link to the government summary policy notes, which if you can't read the text of the bill, read those. They give you an idea. We've got child protection plan in the last 5 years. That meant originally when the bill was brought in, it was either on a child protection plan or inquiries were being carried out about putting the child on a plan. These amendments extended it till the last 5 years.
Right.
So that's more draconian. It means families, and it may their child. The parents may not have been the danger to the child, but because outside forces were possibly, they were being drawn into gangs at school or anything like that. That will capture all those children. Pilot scheme mandatory meetings. They're going to run a pilot scheme in up to 30% of local authorities to see the idea of when a parent doesn't apply, informs the school that they are intending to deregister their child from school to home educate, they will require local authority permission to do so. And prior to gaining that permission, the school has to arrange a meeting with the LA, with the parent, and with the child. And that will be mandatory. And if that doesn't take place, there'll be no ability to deregister.
But can I just stop? I just want to highlight that this is a pilot scheme, and it's a pilot scheme that will be carried out by no more than 30% of local authorities. So your local authority may not be one of those that's taking part in the pilot scheme. So just to be aware of that. But I think this is with a view to make rolling it out across the whole country if they like what it does. What do you think,
Yes,
Randy?
precisely.
Yeah.
And it is in England or Wales. It's
Yeah.
30% of the local authorities in both countries. So it
Yes.
will affect everywhere. And Wales has already got its own scheme up and running. So we'll see what happens there. The
Yeah.
welcome bit of the government amendments was they're going to reduce the amount of information that's required and the frequency at which parents have to put it up. I think they heard that. That's to be welcome, but if all it's doing is sugaring the pill has got more noxious as a result of the rest of the
Yeah.
amendment.
It's only the tiniest bit of sugar.
A very small bit of sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. Say a
So
spoonful makes a
that's
medicine go round, and this is not a spoonful, it's just a sprinkling.
yeah. And the other one, the other major change that they were bringing in is home assessment after registration. So these aren't the registers that local authorities operate now. It is it is the new registers that are being set up. So parents whose children are already on voluntary registers with the local authority, they will have to go onto this mandatory register, and within 15 days of that happening, the local authorities will be required to make an assessment of the child's home within those 15 days. Now, does that mean they have to visit? It doesn't spell it out like that, but it certainly is how many local authorities will think.
Yes, it says they may request to visit the child, but if you refuse, that may be considered a relevant factor in determining whether to serve a preliminary notice.
Yes. So it's a must consider and a may request a visit. But the request to visit comes with the caveat that it will go against you if you say no. And
So you don't
that's
really have
not
a
good.
choice here. Yeah.
It isn't um, freely given consent to a visit. There's a level of coercion there, which I think could fall foul of privacy laws, but that would have to be tested in courts. And finally, right at the bottom, you can just see it on the screen. Fiona points to the policy notes, which are also useful to look at. So that's Fiona's first post. And as I say, it was no surprise to me that all of those got waved through with no objection.
Yeah.
So
And
do we want to go on to what did get through with a bit of
yes, so we do want to look at kind of just discuss it so people understand the implications of it. And obviously, this was a very, very long session on Wednesday
yeah,
evening. They were in there till the
midnight?
12:05 a.m. Yeah, yeah, which is quite unusual. But that just shows, obviously, because they have a limited number of days in which to do this, and they were determined to push through this one. Um, yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
there is that.
I think many of us were surprised that they pushed it through without adding an extra day in, but that's what the whips decided, and we will leave that there. That's the thing. Fiona mentions on her other page, we look at another page of hers at the moment, and right at the bottom of that, going down, she mentions what happened, but then she talks about Baroness Barron's Amendment 121A, which
Yes,
was put to the vote by Baroness Barron and was agreed. Now, she would not have done that if she did not know she had a good numbers of supporters in the House. This is why amendments like Lord's Ways didn't get voted on because Lord Way was a lone voice, but Baroness
Mhm.
Barron had done a lot of work, got a lot of peers on her side for this amendment, and that's why she put it to the vote. And it
Yeah,
was an amendment that was sought to ensure local authorities must consent to withdrawal of a child from school if they are currently or have been inquiries, proceedings, or actions initiated in relation to the children to the child under Section 31 or 47 of the Children's Act 1989, or the child is currently classified as a child in need under Section 17. And that
um,
really does widen the scope of this bill. It goes a very long way to making it
yeah,
unworkable. And as far as
yeah.
I can see, I don't think this will survive going back to the Commons. I think the
One
government,
can one can hope, and I think the thing with this is that it's hugely burdensome on the local authorities as well if they've got to go and find out if there's any sort of history. And if you think if it's only about inquiries, as well, like you can have some, as somebody's mentioned in the comments here, that children can be placed on child protection plans for issues such as an injury in a non-mobile child, or if the child has complex medical needs, or a disability. And we're going to get this up here. So it will still remain on the child's history. I saw a comment in one of the groups today where there was some historic involvement with an adult child. A child is now grown up. There's a historic issue, and this person has a child they're home educating. Now, that could be a problem for that family. But obviously, the adult child can now ask maybe to have that removed from that record to be removed. So there are some things that can be done. Um, so
yeah.
the other thing is that also it might prevent people from seeking support, much needed support, uh,
Well,
which would
it
get
will
them in
be.
a situation where they get discriminated against in this way.
Look, a child in need is a child in need of help. It's not a
Mm.
child in danger. And this, if this amendment stops in the bill, it will stop a lot of families asking for help from the local authority for the simplest things. If your child has got, say, deformity in one foot and they need a special pair of shoes to cope with it, it is the type of thing you could ask for help for. And if you
Yeah,
do now, you will be ruling yourself out of ever being able to take that child out of school if the school proves unsuitable to meeting their needs. And this will really stop people. But as I say, I don't really think this is going to survive the thing. And my real question with this is, what is Baroness Barron thinking of tabling this? What is her
I know, I
object?
know.
She knows it won't stop in the bill, but what is she trying to bring about?
Well,
She's
she
an
did
ex
say she's sorry. If you're about to
Go
say
on.
what she's about, then I don't want to interrupt your answer if
No,
you're
no,
going to
no.
give
I
the
was just
answer.
saying she's an ex-minister, so what she's about. So if you've got an
Yes,
idea, tell
yes.
us.
Well, I mean, because I agree. I also thought, what there's something afoot here, something going on behind the scenes that perhaps we don't know about. Now, I know she did. So after they did the voting on the government bill, on that part of the bill, and then Baroness Barron stood up and said she wishes to test the House. So
Yeah.
basically, she's testing: do these ministers have an appetite for this?
No,
That's
no,
what I
she's
see
not
it as.
testing that. What she's doing, she's showing to the ministers that she's won the argument with the majority of the peers.
Okay, so
That
it means that if the Conservatives came in again, we couldn't be looking to them to save us in this situation.
well, that's that's always a possibility. But the problem is all the major parties have the same view in this area. They didn't have it back in 2009, 2010. but they have now, and there's that journey. We can always take them back on that journey, but that is it. Um, but I think what we really need to do, Julia, is to find out the mind of the government on this. And I've shared a PDF with Kat that comes from, uh, which perhaps we could share on here. Yep, that's it. This is a letter dating from 14th of July last year, when Baroness Barron was moving to bring in some of these changes, but even now, when she retabled them a fortnight ago, they were much more draconian than they were in July. So right at the top, in yellow, I've just highlighted something about Baroness Barron, in that Baroness Smith says to her, "Thank you for your thoughtful debate on Clause 30 and for sharing your knowledge and expertise in child protection." So I can't find out much about her, but here's the thing, that she has a child protection background, and that is quite a thing.
That's like a doctor who only ever worked in the emergency room, or
Yes.
worked. Then he's expecting that every child has ever had a fall is because there's a specific kind of problem that where it skews your perception sometimes.
Yeah. Now, if we go down to where it's in red at either side, we discover this is about the amendment in the committee stage, which was number 207. And Smith says we share the desire to protect as many children as possible from harm. Really, the law talks about serious harm. If you're coming to harm, that could be anything from like stabbing the back of their hand with a pencil. It could be something minor.
And if they were so concerned about that, they'd be in the schools protecting some children from harm in school too, wouldn't they?
Yes, yeah. So their language is pretty bad. They are not precise enough. It is not the government's job to protect every child from every minor piece of harm. So they both share that, and that is worth remembering. But here is what she said to her back then, when she was proposing something less demanding than is now being temporarily put in the bill. Highlighted in yellow, however, amending to include all children who have ever been on a child protection plan would at least triple the number of children potentially in scope of the measures, and it would not necessarily capture those who most need the additional attention. Parents often work hard with multi-agency professionals to reduce risk and to no longer need child protection support. So Smith recognises that parents can move on from when this happened. Barron doesn't seem to recognise that. And down at the bottom of the page, she basically says, this is ridiculous, going back 10 to 16 years to find out what happened to a child then if there's no current arrangement, no current problems. And a little bit on the next page, numbers could be challenging for the local authorities to manage. Certainly would be. It would be tripling in this version the size of the haystack. In the current version, it's going to do that, make many more haystacks to go looking for.
Now, admittedly,
go on.
Sorry, there's obviously a bit of a delay. Sorry, so I can't just interrupt at will. Admittedly, we're talking about people who want to home educate. So we're not looking at every single child. We're looking at families where we want to home educate, but because of this thing in our background, we have to ask consent. So perhaps they're reasoning, oh, well, it won't be that many who fall in this category who want to ask consent. But I think the issue is not that. The issue is, first of all, it can be discriminatory because there can be many reasons why you have this involvement at some point in your lives. So it can be discriminatory for no good reason. The other thing is that it's what was the other thing I was going to say? Now I've just don't. But basically, you've got all these different situations, and it will stop people from seeking support if they think they're going to perhaps want to home educate
Yeah,
in the
and
future.
I think Smith recognised that. That is why I think Barron's amendment will be taken out during ping pong as unworkable. The DFE will not want to fund local authorities for all this extra work. They can't afford
Mm.
it.
Yeah, I mean there are concerns. One of the, I think what I was going to say early on is that we know. So one of the things they discussed on Wednesday night is they said we're going to train all these local authorities, because one of our complaints has been, but the local authorities are inconsistent. It's a postcode lottery, so in certain local authorities this kind of thing would be a real nightmare, and in another local authority they may be very measured, very even-handed, and no drama. Just tick the box if everything's okay. So now they've said they're going to offer training across the board to all local authorities. So that's also going to cost
Training,
them some money, isn't it?
well, that's going to cost money, but also training is a two-edged sword. If it's done by somebody who understands the dangers of local authorities overstepping the mark
Mm.
and is there to say to them, you cannot invade people's privacy just because you hate home educators, um, that might be good. But there's people like Daniel Monk around, a professor who's for some years has been offering training on home education, and he advised. He was involved around the time of the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill in 2009. He advised Lord Soley in 2017 on his private members bill that was the catalyst to get all this going again. And somebody like Daniel Monk doing the training would be a disaster because he has a philosophical commitment that home education shouldn't be allowed and children are better in school. And that would not be helpful. So training, you have to say what quality of training to what extent.
Yeah, and we would want to see home educating families being part of that training. So we've got some comments coming in here. So Randall, one of our commenters, has mentioned the story that you wanted to highlight, to do with the term professional curiosity. Can we
Yeah,
share that story at this point?
hopefully we can. This is a post um, by an MP from North Yorkshire. And I'm just trying to remember his name. But yeah, it's up on the screen. There's a video on there as well. You might have to refresh the screen or accept cookies to show it. But there's a video on there which he tells the story of a contact he had from a family he knew, a farming family, and they'd heard a disturbance in the farmyard outside at night. They hadn't gone out, but in the morning they'd found a set of keys. So they rang up the police and said, "We found these keys. Do you want us to bin them, or do you want to come and collect them?" They said they'd come and collect them, and they sent a young, not a fully qualified police officer, one of these community support officers around, probably fresh out of training from reading the story. And they hadn't waited to be invited into the house. They said they knocked on the door, didn't get an answer, so they just hoped the door was unlocked, so they just walked in and announced their arrival, which I think the police should never do. And wasn't really interested in the set of keys. Immediately asked, "Do you have children in the house? Can I see them?" And I won't go into the full details, but demanded to see the children, including looking in their bedrooms and things like this. And the family were really upset about this. They didn't know why it had happened and things, so they went to their MP, and he happens to be the chairman of the Conservative Party. And I think that's why it's really helpful on this if we could get him engaged. And I do know somebody in his constituency is already in touch with him. And he wrote to them. And at the bottom of this post, there's the replies. His letter's the top item. The two responses from the North Yorkshire Police is page 1 and page 2. And then his letter back is the bottom one at the bottom. Kevin, I'm sorry, I can't remember his surname. Anyway, in the reply, the chief constable tells the MP there was nothing wrong with the way this young support officer acted. It is what she has been trained to do, to exercise professional curiosity. And
It's because it was a farm, wasn't it? Yeah.
Basically, when she went into the farmhouse, it was not as clean as she's used to. It was a bit smelly. Well, farmhouses are. I live in a rural area. We have good friends in farmhouses. I don't think I'd want to eat a meal off their kitchen floor, but they're good people. They are not. The smell in the house comes with the cows. Let me tell you that, right? And I've got the feeling this young officer had never been on a farm before in their life. And she decided that this could be a safeguarding issue. And this is why they asked to see children. And I think they might have even asked to look in the fridge. And to me, this is a wonderful thing to talk to MPs about this phrase, professional curiosity, because school teachers, health visitors, medical staff, and police officers all get the same quality of professional training. Oh, it's that word again, Juliet. Professional training, and the objective is to make them state snoopers, state busybodies, because the state does no longer trust parents. And if there's slight things that are not up to their standards in the home, they'll forget about why they're there. They suddenly get alarm bells ringing. If I do not exercise professional curiosity, and then there's a child harmed, I will be in for trouble. And so they are trained, they are programmed to do this. And this is what home educators will meet with these mandatory visits to homes. It's already happening to people who have children who are children in need, who are disabled. Professor Luke Clements from Leeds University works with Sabriba, a support organisation, and about 2.5, 3 years ago published a really good report about a culture of parent carer blame. Professionals own their first protocol. If a child has problems, they believe the parent is doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And this is what this story highlights. And because it's been published by an MP, then what we do need to see is that that can be used with other MPs.
Yes, and I think there's an awful lot of people in these roles that have never put themselves on the receiving end, have never sort of imagined what would it be like if somebody came to my home and I was having an off day and the laundry was piled up and maybe I had a bad cold and I hadn't been able to get to it, or I have building work. And so they're not always able to withhold that sort of judgment. And they're not always qualified to judge in respect of children. There's many other things that give you an indication of whether the child is at risk of harm or not. And I think it's kind of a lazy way where they kind of just looking for any excuse really to question and to undermine. So I want to just look at a few. We did have a question here from Becca. Will children with a child children with a child protection plan that are home educated. So if a child is already home educated and they are on either on a child protection plan or child in need, will they be affected too? So
Well,
this is something that, as far as I can make out, if this register comes and our children not in school register is now instituted, they are going to look at cases that are already home educating, aren't they?
yeah.
Yeah.
The, if the child is already known to the local authority to be home educated, it would be illogical for the local authority to say, well, you have to stop till we give you permission. That would be illogical. I can't rule it out, but it could happen. Um, what Let me stress again, these registers are not the voluntary ones that local authorities use now. Whether local authority officers will be able to exercise common sense and say, well, we know this person's been home educating, we have no concerns, we don't need to visit, we don't need to talk to them, we will just inform them, we are satisfied. We've done it. Now, that will be the sensible way. But there will be plenty of officers who, as I say, have other agendas, who don't want to be said you didn't do enough. You know, the government, the state doesn't like admitting it fails, which is why it shifts blame onto home educators in cases like Shara Sharif. It shifts the blame when it's their systems that fail. They won't want to do that. So, everybody will be minding their own backs in implementing these things. Maybe
Yeah, we've
somebody
become
needs
a
to be,
very, very risk averse society as well. That
yes,
because of these cases where things, social workers have come under scrutiny, and actually rightfully so in some cases. I think in the Sarah Sharif case, rightfully so. That to me, they're using that case as almost the entire basis for all of this. As And yet it's not.
so,
It's a flawed case in respect of home education. It has many other indicators. I just well, we can switch. I wanted to check. So we've got another comment here from Rebecca, because where I think it's Alison that used to use the word iatrogenic, which is basically when the treatment. So, say for instance, you had a problem, a medical health problem, and the doctor gives you medication for that problem, but that medication causes more problems to your health, more side effects than the problem did in the first place. And I think that
yeah.
this is what this bill could potentially be: is that it's because it's so over, what would you call it? It's so heavy-handed. It's that it could cause more harm than solving the problems that they've said they're trying to solve. And so Rebecca said it's just so.
When you are,
So
yeah,
Rebecca just said that it
when you
undoes
are,
all the measures. Yeah.
yeah, when you're focused on only the state can safeguard children, you cannot accept that what the state does damages children.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that is a real difficult thing for people to get in their mind. It comes from a mindset that says the state and its employees are capable. People outside that group, unless certified by the state, are incapable. And
Yeah.
therefore, it's only when, but nearly every child case like Sarah Sharif, or to go back to 2009, Kyra Ishak, and even back further to Victoria Climby, every time it is the state's employees who have failed to do their job properly. More recently, not home
Yes.
education, really, Starr Hobson and Arthur Lavinia Hughes during the lockdown period. Starr was too young to be home educated, but the state knew about them and the state did not believe the families. The state
Yeah.
set the families' testimony to the side and trusted in the state employees to make good decisions. And when you've
Yeah.
got that mentality, you cannot accept that what the state does causes harm. I'm old enough to remember, and I can't remember all the details, but when I was much younger, there was some group of people up in the Shetlands, I think it was, which were into some religious group, and the state decided they were harming their children, and they took them off the mass, en masse. And years later, it came out that actually the state did more harm to those children than the parents were ever doing.
Well, I think
And
that is the
that is,
point.
yeah.
Yeah. So we have been joined
Can I just
by
make,
Jen as well. So I just want to say
yeah,
hi to Jen, and we will ask her to come in shortly. What did you want to say there, Randall?
2 points though about what we can use from these amendments going forward. In the very short term, what we can do is now these amendments are going back into the Commons. There is now a reason, maybe wait a little bit, but not too long. Let's get next week's hearing out. Then you can go back to your MPs and say to them, this bill is coming back to you, and there is this amendment here from Baroness Barron. It is ridiculous. It is going to damage children. It needs to be taken out. But that will mean that we have a reason to write to them and to engage with them. So that's one good thing coming out of that amendment. And you can then talk to them about the government amendments as well. But I suggest people major on Baroness Barron's first, and then thank them for the little bit of easing with the government amendments, but say there are dangers in the others. And then looking longer term, this bill is likely to go through. We do know they have to consult on um, the regulations or guidance, which will be a 3-month consultation and so on. But before they can bring it in, because of one of the government amendments, which is actually a good one when you think about it, is, I don't want to get too technical, there's 2 ways of putting guidance through Parliament. It has to go back to Parliament. One is a affirmative process where it's got to be voted on by MPs and approved. The other is a negative thing where it's published and it goes through unless somebody objects. Now, they were
Yeah.
planning to do most of it on the latter. It has now all been brought into the affirmative process, not just in the first instance, but every time it's changed.
Yeah.
That means that when we get to that stage, again, you can say to your MP, this is going through, the consultation was like this, we think it was badly done, the results come out like this, we need you to oppose this stuff. And it gives us another place to engage with our MPs. And if we do it long enough, we might begin, and we do it in constructive ways, we might begin to see people beginning to hear our voices. So
Yeah.
we have got 2 more engagement opportunities with MPs in the future, and people need to do it. And please do tell other home educators who do not want to know about the politics what this bill now does, and tell them it will go through like that unless enough families engage with their MPs and
Yes.
other politicians.
And
So
before
put
we
the them.
Yeah. So So before we were going to still just to talk about a few other things that you need to know about, but by the end of this, we will talk about what you can do. We will be giving you some ideas of what can still be done um, to try and push back some more. So what was next there, Kat? We wanted to share some other things. So of course, one of the things, another source that is really good for helping you understand the hidden agendas behind this bill and reading between the lines and all of that is Rabbi Asher Gratz's Substack. And there's a couple of articles that explain some of the concerns. So we've got there would be the difference in the bill. So the bill, if you can pause there, Kat, the way they're approaching the bill in respect of schools is very different in how it's addressing things for children not in school. So the way they've worded the law for schools is very different. Our part of the bill is very, what would you call it? It leaves a lot open to interpretation and to adding on bits and filling, to fill in the gaps. I mean, Randall, I know you will have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is what's called Henry VIII power, and in recent years, probably over the last 20 years, government drafting of bills has left more and more to the minister, the Secretary of State, all across the board, not just in education, to fill in the details later. They're now called framework bills. They don't put the details in the bill, they leave it there. And they think that's fine. With our bill, it's already been said, I think it was said in the Commons committee stage by Stephen Morgan, who was then one of the ministers, that this they needed to leave it flexible so that they can adjust to the way that what he was meaning parents try and get round. And let's give you a quick example of that. Full-time education, there's no definition of it in legislation, but it's generally been accepted that it's more than 18 hours a week. So a lot of the small learning communities that exist, which these days a lot of home educators use, you'll find they operate for 17 and a half hours or less. That's because if you go above 17 and a half, the DFE or Ofsted will say, well, that's near enough 18 hours, we're going to do it. So they do it like that. Well, what they want to do is to be able to adjust that time. So if more and more people start doing 17 and a half hours, they'll bring it down. And that's what they want to do with what data is collected from home educators, where it can go. They want to be able to adjust it. And every time they adjust it, I can guarantee they will not reduce it. They will increase it. And so it's all right saying, that's it, but it's a foot in the door method. Once the big man has got his foot in the door, he wants to get his whole body in the house.
Yeah, they
and
say
that is what with these framework bills.
Yes. Now I know, Jen, you run a setting, an out of school setting, so to speak, alternative provision. So I know you've been paying a lot of attention to these aspects of the bill. So we've got a part in the bill that focuses on education providers, and that will affect anyone that's providing a service to home educated children, not so.
Where parents drop off. I don't think it will include where parents are attending, but anything where you're dropping off your children. But at the moment, as Randall's just said, they're leaving it as wide and broad as possible, and they're using language around which kind of Randall's touched on, with the idea of people, organisations like us who work within the law, that we're somehow trying to evade the law, that they're kind of suggesting that alternative provisions, forest schools, any kind of educational drop-off group is evading the law by operating inside of the law, which is really strange. It's a really strange idea. And that there's and when we talk about kind of further action we can take, which I know we're going to touch on later or in a bit, one thing I was going to suggest was actually reaching out to provisions that offer this kind of thing, because we know they're closing, we know the offers are shutting, we know that across the country organisations are kind of getting wind of what's happening and going, you know what, we don't really have any appetite for getting involved in this, and we don't want any problems, so they're starting to withdraw offers. But letting them know it's happening, because certainly I've told alternative provisions in my area a kind of networking meeting about it, and basically there was like 1 out of maybe 20 that had a clue that it was happening, and it's going to impact them. And whether that is, you know, I don't know where the government's coming from this, whether it is actually short-sighted and they don't understand how much alternative provisions are used by the Department of Education anyway, local authorities. So whether they're going to cut their own nose off to spite their face, or whether they're going to get more detailed about, well, it doesn't count if you're on roll and it does count if you're home educated, or it's messy. But I think certainly one thing that families can do is start talking to groups and organize. And certainly whenever I see anyone advertising on Facebook, I always say, oh, do you know about the bill? Because that's more voices, and it's more voices coming from a different angle.
Well, we've already found that in some instances there are now colleges that offer 14 to 16 provision that are now saying they don't want to take home educated children anymore. They have to be in school or come from school. And we are seeing, because education providers will be required to give information to the local authority, which, to be honest, I actually don't get it, because if I've paid for the service, it's actually nobody else's business if I'm the one paying it. But they think we can't. They think as parents we can't judge for ourselves when it's the right person or not.
I'm not sure, like, the motivation behind colleges. I don't know if it's more a case that the need within school is getting so high that they need to meet the needs of the school children who have not had their needs met first. So because there's this increasingly large cohort of children from mainstream who are on roll and there's nowhere to put them, that they're like, right, we can't have home educators in here because we haven't got enough room for the kids that we're failing and they're still on roll. And whether it's, you know, I know there's funding pressures as well. That's certainly definitely the case. But the information sharing is huge, and I can't even go there yet with my head, because I have to wait and see what it looks, if it comes to fruition, what it looks like, because that could annihilate so many organisations. Because if parents go, well, no, we're not having that's going to massively reduce provision.
Well, because they have to consider all the settings where the child is being educated. They have now stipulated that they're going to say within a certain number, over a certain number of hours, which, you know, it's like, well, here's a crumb for you. You know, we you know, they give you these little bits of, well, at least we're not asking for everything. They give you those, like, so you must be thankful that they're not intruding into your entire life.
Yeah, the concern though is this whole idea of majority of education, that within that they've still not, unless Randall says different, I've not noticed that they've said it's going to be like a blanket number. I mean, from how I interpreted what they'd written, they could decide on an individual basis if they believe a child is getting the majority of their education at a provider. The provider is now an illegal school, and they've got the choice of registering or facing prosecution. And that's ludicrous, that you could have the LA look at one child and go, well, they're coming to your outdoor forest school, which happens to cover kind of basic skills and all this different stuff, and the rest of the time actually we're not going to count what they're doing at home as education. Bam, you're a school. So that's nuts. And I don't think I know there's not been any proper thought around this area because, you know, I spoke to our local authority, kind of the head of alternative provision, and they had to go away and ask, and nobody knew about it. They had been told nothing. The EHE department has been told nothing.
Yep.
Nobody has told them
The
what
same
this is going to look
where
like,
I am.
what this is, and certainly the alternative provision world is already vastly holding up our mainstream provision and bridging that gap between mainstream and specialist. If the government accidentally outlaws it, I mean, you know, and I was you know, the providers my colleagues in this, they quite often have children coming 3 days a week. Well, that will automatically be the majority of their education, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, but don't worry, schools can give them free breakfast, and that will fix all the problems.
And a budget uniform.
Yeah, there you go. So then it'll fix everything.
Just to come in on that, really, I said earlier that, you know, we really do need to wake up the majority of home educators who don't want to engage with what's coming through this bill. I have to say, I am really sad when we're moving on to the independent educational institutions section, that I think there hasn't been enough movement from that people who use them and people who run them. There was only one amendment in Wednesday's sitting that addressed that, and that was by the Bishop of Manchester, Amendment 175A, and that was particularly looking at schools that focus on a religious content. And Jen was asking why they're trying to do this. I think the simple answer is the DFE are not very bright at understanding what's happening outside of schools. I don't think they're that bright at understanding what's inside schools, but they're less bright. And they have been got at by a very powerful lobby, which is the Humanist UK. And they've been on this for over a decade. And their main objective is they believe no child should be taught religion at any stage, really. And that's one reason why they want to shut down. And we've been looking earlier at Rabbi's Substack. Asher Grat is a Haredi Jew, and they operate religious schools, have done for a very long time, for hundreds of years, probably over 1,000 years, and they're very successful. And I'm not going into that, but they do not teach modern British values as a priority. They teach their cultural values, which are much higher than British values, but in areas where the government don't want children to learn those values. And a lot of this has been driven by that, but the DFE are not bright enough to say, well, if we do that for that group, it will affect everybody. And most people don't see it. You know, I will say this quite simply. If home educators lose the right to withdraw their children from school, if the school is no longer meeting what they consider to be the needs of their children, that will undermine every parent in the country.
Yeah.
Because it takes agency away from parents and puts it in the state's hands. And we know from the impact right assessment that the DFE believe the government have the legal right to insist that every child attends school. And that is really what's behind this bill. It's behind the CNIS registers. It is behind the independent educational institutions, because they see these things as a danger because they're outside of government oversight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been looking at Rabbi Asher Gratz's Substack, which you can go and look for yourself, and you can go and subscribe to that, because he does raise a lot of very good points that will affect many families. I just want to point to, because we've been going on quite a long time, so just to point out some other resources. We have the Home Ed Daily, which had a good article on we'll come to that one in a bit, but Home Ed Daily had some good points on the bill. No, Kat is probably looking to see which link it is, which is fine. But what we need to do is now talk about, before we go to the things of what we're going to do, what we can still do, we need to just talk about, in reality, what is this going to look like? People want to know, what will this look like? So I'm just going to quickly run through a few things. So because I've had a few questions come from people. People want to know, what can we expect with regard to visits? Will there be guidance? So yes, the Baroness Smith has said there will be guidance, and these things will be kind of fine-tuned in the guidance. So the guidance should be basically saying what you can and can't, in terms of your visits and that kind of thing. So we know that the visits aren't necessarily going to be demanded by some locals. There probably will be local authorities that don't have to, that won't be as bothered as others. But there will be others who will use this like a stick over family. So we don't actually know. It's going to be different from one local authority to another. Now, Randall has to go in about 3 minutes, so I'm going to ask him quickly before he goes. Could you please tell us, where are we at with the bill, and what is the foreseeable timeline? But if you can say it in 3 minutes, that would be perfect.
I'll try and say it quicker than that. It has to go, once we finish Tuesday's sitting, it will then have to go to third reading. There'll be a new updated version of the bill printed later next week. That will then be circulated, and the date, I think, is in early February that has been fixed. I'm not sure if there's one other sitting that is separate to that, or whether, like we had in the Commons, they had 2 days on the report, and there was a final stage that sent it off to the Lords, where just Bridget Phillipson and the opposition spokesperson spoke, and then it just got waved on. So there may be technically 2 stages, but it may all be done on February the 7th. It will then go back to the Commons, because there's a number of amendments being made, and the Commons have to consider, that's the technical word, those amendments. There's quite a lot, because they'll have to consider the government ones, but there won't be much debate about them unless we stir up MPs to do that. Once the Commons have got through those things, if they've made any changes, it will have to go back to the Lords, and that will really get what's called ping pong going, and it just goes back and forth till both houses agree. With this bill, because it's a government bill, eventually the Commons can say, we've looked at it enough times, you Lords have got to agree to what we want, or else we'll just push it through anyway. So it will not go on forever. But whether that happens, whether it gets through ping pong before Easter recess or shortly afterwards, we don't know. Once it's got through ping pong, it formally receives passing in the Lords, and when it's passed in the Lords, it then goes to the King to sign, and it comes into law. But not everything comes into law at once. So with the children not in school sections, we know they have committed to a 3 months consultation on new guidance. When that starts, we don't know, but I get the feeling the DFE have got it drafted already. May have to make some changes, but not many, and expect it fairly soon after that. And at that point, They do the consultation. They should take 3 months to process what comes in. They know what they want to do anyway, and then they publish the guidance. And once that's published, there'll be a date when it actually comes in, that guidance comes into force. Technically, it could be September this year. I think that's unpractical because they've got to also get things like the software out to the local authorities who are running the registers. They've got to do the training of people. So I expect 2027 more likely than 2026.
Okay, well, that's your time. I guess that was your alarm going off.
That was my alarm going off. Did it come through?
It did, yes. But anyway, thank you so much, Randall, for joining us. We are going to just stay on a little while and just finish up. And if anyone of you has questions, thanks, Randall. So, Jen, that was an interesting view I had of your tummy or whatever it was. Anyway, okay, so there's a few things that I want to mention. Okay, so there's a lot is going to be in guidance. There's a lot that we don't know yet. So we've got questions coming through about, if my child does swimming 7 days a week, or if my child does dancing 20 hours a week, if all
Julia,
these
I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you at all.
Oh, gee, yeah. Well, I can hear you, but obviously this is we're having fun tonight. So people are asking questions about these things. So we do not know. They will stipulate, I'm sure, how many hours, and they're going to have to justify that because there are many, many school children who also spend many hours doing other things as well. So I just want to see also somebody asked, can visits be conducted virtually? Now, I'm sure that will also be in guidance and it will be at the discretion of the local authority, quite possibly. Can a school attendance order be challenged? That I'm not sure of the detail of quite yet. I'm sorry if because we've had a lot to take in and process. The only other thing that I did notice that we haven't really raised is that besides the fact that they want to do a home visit like within 15 days of you asking to home educate, because these days it looks like you're going to have to ask. Besides that, they also want to, you've got your initial stage, your informal inquiries, and then we used to have notice to satisfy and then school attendance order, but they're calling that middle bit now preliminary notice. And they basically, the preliminary notice would require that the local authority can ask to visit the child inside any of the homes in which the child lives. Another bit is about giving information about your address. If you moved address within the past 12 months, you'd have to give your previous address as well. And let me just see if there's anything else that stands out. Oh, and the support, as we mentioned, their big support package of what they're going to provide for us. Wait for it. Information about exams. Not exam access, not that, I know that a lot of people say we don't want to ask for anything from the state because that has strings attached. It looks like we have strings attached now anyway. So to my mind, we might as well get something back for it. And one of the things that made me really angry on Wednesday night, there was a bit where Lord Story, of all people, because Lord Story has traditionally not been very pro home ed. He's been one of those beating the drum for a register. But Lord Story said, come on, the least you can do is give these kids access to exams. Now, he wasn't asking anything big. He's asking that schools or colleges that they extend the service to home educators to be able to come and sit exams there. That's what he's asking. And he was pointing out the amount of money that we are saving the state, and that we could be given this little bit in terms of exam. And the response from the government was basically like, well, people take all responsibility and they're the ones who chose not to be part of the system. But excuse me, my taxes pay for their children to be in that system. My taxes are paying for those schools. And it is darn cheeky to be so tight-fisted with our taxes when it comes to our children. It is just mean, and it yeah, it shows the true spirit behind this. To me, that reveals so much of the spirit behind this. We have a question from Tony. Why are LAs behaving like the new bill is already out and all right, already removed? And this is unfortunately something we do see from time to time with certain local authorities, where they say, well, it's coming in anyway, so we're going to start introducing it. We're going to start like they think they're doing you a favor by easing you in. You know, like when somebody is going to break up with you and they think they'll just like ghost you for a bit, but just get you ready for it. So they're going to start behaving in a way that we which is not lawful. And I think as long as this isn't law, you need to still hold them to account for what is the current law. It is still unlawful if they demand things of you that have not been requested through law. Okay, so jumping through anything else there, Kat, what else is anything else we've left out that we want to pick up here? Okay, so let me get that down. Yeah.
Ridiculous, because the vast majority of children are very happy in school, because otherwise why would the vast majority of people do it? And I thought, not only have you just erased the entire SEND nation of 20-25% at least of children in school, but to talk with such rich privilege that well, other people would choose, wouldn't they? And it's like, yeah, okay, because we're all in a position that we can all afford to home educate, because there's loads of families that would love to do it, but actually they can't make the sums add up, and they can't do different work, or they haven't got access. They feel like they live remotely, or they live somewhere that they're like, we rely on the school bus for our kids to see other kids, and we wouldn't be able to do X, Y, and Z. So I think what I came away with was just an absolute, because I've always been not necessarily like pro House of Lords, but like pro check and measure, that it's right that it isn't just down to the government and there should be something. But the amount of ignorance and just pure like talking about local authorities like they're these ever benevolent angelic people who just get everything right and everything's wonderful,
Yes,
and
but
always going to make the right decision, and that our schools are these incredible places. And I was like, what planet are you on?
yeah, I think there is that. I wanted to raise one more thing about the support, which I think could be a positive thing, but one of the crumbs we've been offered is that the local authorities must offer a forum to discuss the operations of these sections of the bill twice a year, even if it's just for one person. So I want to really just challenge everybody to make sure, if this bill passes, that you get to you will be the one person, or maybe you will take plenty along with you, but you will be the one person that ensures twice a year
That these
that
forums
forum is
happen,
held.
and you
Yeah,
want them
so
as
make
busy as possible in as big a
yeah
room as possible, with as
yeah
many complicated needs that need meeting, accessibility,
and yes,
make
and
it
explaining
get
why
your
this
money
doesn't work
worth.
and why that doesn't work. Yeah, and I think yes, because basically you can say, well, this isn't working for me because that, and then this other one can say, well, this isn't working, and we can make it unworkable as well. So let's so one there's a few things we can talk about. So this past week we have released, I won't say we, the action group, this is from Stop the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill page, we have released this music video, which is not necessarily about home education. It is about children being under surveillance, their data being collected, and that kind of thing. And it's just something that you can share very easily. It is on YouTube, and hopefully that link will get shared in comments, but it is also available as a Facebook reel, so you can share it more widely on Facebook as well, and in other places. And I hope you will enjoy it, and I hope that for those that put it together, it is a very heartfelt plea to people just to really consider what you're doing to our children, and allowing them to have this proper childhood without having their lives dissected for all to see and on the record for years and years. So so that song, please take a look out for it. It is being shared. You can go to the Stop the Children's Wellbeing in Schools page and you can get it from there and just share it. It is public to share as widely as possible, because as I said, it's not only about home education. Okay, then the Kat, have you got something else there? Is anything we've missed out that was vital? Yes, please. So if you remember last year, we had our petition to withdraw the Children's Wellbeing in Schools bill, and then that one had barely got to it. We managed to get that to over 100,000 signatures, which meant the government had to debate it, and they debated it early December. And basically, barely had that one sort of closed, then somebody launched this one called Withdraw the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill immediately. So please, if you could share this as widely as possible, so that we would ideally, it's already sort of government response threshold that it's crossed, but we would ideally like to get this one debated as well. The more we can force the government to debate the same thing again and again, surely the more we are going to chip away at some of the arguments. So please do share this widely and get as many members of your family to share that as well. So Anne was asking about the song. Is it shareable for Instagram? And it is on the Instagram page for Stop CWS Bill. Okay, so you can go and find it there. Another thing we will be doing is we will be releasing some template letters that you can send to MPs, because now once again our attention shifts to the MPs, and we will hope to get some template letters out there. I'm also encouraging people to write to leaders of the political parties. Obviously, not so much Labour, because we're not going to win that one there. We have to remember that Labour have 404 MPs, and the rest of everyone else in the parliament, all the other parties altogether, is about 214. So we're in a dire situation. We really, really are. So what I'm encouraging people to do is to write to Kemi Badenoch and to who's the leader of Ed Davey, and can't think who the leader of the Zach Polaniki or something his name is, for the Green Party, and even Nigel Farage. You do not have to like these people. You do not have to agree with them. But what you can do is write to them and say, please, does your family stand with the family? If you stand with the family, can you please just stand with us and point out where their policies are, maybe if they're agreeing with the bill, how their policies or manifesto or whatever actually means they should have a different stance and be coming out more for families. We just have to work with what we've got. Okay, Zach Polanski, his name is. So so please, if you could, that's another action you could take. Then another thing that is well worth knowing about is that with a little bit of, we need links as well in the chat if possible, Kat. So for the petition, and yeah, that's so far, and whatever else we share. So some years ago, when we saw the direction of travel, we saw which way the wind was blowing in respect of the politicians really targeting home educators. A group of home educating and home educated people got together and have created a charity called the Joy Baker Fund. Now, the Joy Baker Fund is something that has been set up with a view to providing grants to home educating families or groups in need of financial support toward legal advice or expenses. So this is potentially a grant giving charity where if in the future at any point a family is targeted and they cannot go to court, they don't have the finances, they would be able to apply to the Joy Baker Fund and it would be decided if it merited giving them a grant to help them. If we felt, if the feeling was that this case could have wider implications for the home educating community, then potentially you would receive a grant to help you with your legal fees. So the Joy Baker Fund, it's not an insurance company. It's not something that if you pay into it, you automatically qualify for assistance. People would have to apply, and there would be a panel that would assess the merits of the case and decide whether to give the grant or not. And it's named after Joy Baker, a home educating mother who battled her own local authority in the 1950s. So if you want something to do and you've got some pennies, you can go and just help Joy Baker Fund, because if we can get enough money in that fund, it means that they can start. We would be ready as home educating community. We would be ready for those who may need grants in the future if they are being unjustly prosecuted for home educating. So you can go and have a look at the website and read all about it. As I said, it's not an insurance thing. It's very specific kinds of situations for home educators that it would provide grants for. So the information is on the website, and you can go and donate. You can even just donate, like if you wanted to, £2 a month. And every £2 that would add up and add up and add up. It is a registered charity, and everything is very transparent regarding the fund. If you want to know more, you can ask more. So please do go and have a look at the website, and if you feel you want to invest in the future for home educating families, this is one way you can help to prepare for what we think is coming. And then lastly, just to encourage you to sign up for the Substack that gets put out every Monday. You would receive this in your inbox. It has all the things we've been discussing tonight and more, any links that are relevant for you to know about the bill, to know about these actions. So those are some of the things we can do that are still left that we can do.
I've got some things to add as well.
Yes, Juliet. Sure, absolutely.
Sorry, and apologies for the yawning. It's not you talking. I stayed up far too late watching TV, and I'm always in bed by 10 o'clock, so I was very naughty. Yes. And I spent the day yawning. So I think there's a couple of things. First off, with what's happened in the Lords, it is sparking more engagement with home educators. I've noticed, there's a lot more engagement on posts. People are starting to go, oh dear, we didn't realise it was going to get to this point. So it's a really good time. I know that everybody has been working so hard for over a year of sharing and talking and sharing and talking, but keep it up, because people are starting to pay attention now, because it's starting to all feel a little bit real. I've done a couple of posts over the last couple of days, which are very short, sharp, shock statements. The one yesterday was very much, right, Mr., Mrs., Miss, whatever, MP, if you vote for this bill, you are taking responsibility for the suffering and potential loss of life of young people. You can share that post, obviously, but do feel free to kind of use that wording in an email. So like if you've done enough wordy emails, or you just want to get, a reaction out of them, keep it simple. Just ask them, say, so if you're voting for this, can I just double check that does mean that when my child is suffering, or when my friend's child is self-harming, or when a child loses their life, you're okay with that, yeah? Like you're okay with taking responsibility. So when we're on your doorstep and we've got the news there, and we're telling the community about how you had the opportunity to vote against this, and remember that last petition had 166,000 responses. So you can say that. You can say, and I've done this, as I said, take the wording for the post, help yourself, to say 166,000 people warned you. So you know that when this happens, when this harm happens, we're going to be on your doorstep, and you're going to have to be giving answers to this, because that might rather than, you know, the long emails are wonderful, the stories are wonderful, but maybe it's time for some just short, sharp questions. You know, are you ready for that? Are you ready for that responsibility? Because 166,000 people, that's not 3 people, is it? It's quite a lot of people. So that's
Yeah.
one thing. I've done another one today, which was about Sarah Sharif, because I'm sick to the back teeth of seeing her name being taken in vain, essentially. It's this ongoing barrage, and it has to stop. The only reason we should hear her name mentioned is if we're talking about child social care reform. So again, feel free to save that post and comment, put it as a comment on any post where any newspapers, any government post, or any person who's a bit deluded about things, pop it up as a comment, because it makes very clear facts about the situation. So that's another thing you can do. Also, I think it's really important. This is a really good time to really start getting the voice of children and young people out there. Now, obviously, we don't want to scare our children. We don't want to terrify children. But older teens, certainly, and for any child who you share the information in an age appropriate way, this is a good time for having them reach out. And certainly with, you know, our older teenagers as well, they can be speaking, they can be writing, they can be doing TikToks, they can be doing reels, they can be on Instagram, slam poetry. Like, there's so many ways that they can be expressing their feelings about what this change could do for them. They might be adults now and have younger siblings. They could be looking at it as a perspective of when they have children, but their voices will be more, they will cut through better than a load of waffling old women, which I feel like we are half the time.
Yeah, well,
so use not that we're not amazing waffling old women, but please start, encourage your young people to use that voice, to not be overwhelmed by it and scared from it, but to be empowered and emboldened by it.
Yeah, and the thing about not to be scared is that, you know, yes, this bill is awful. The amendments are awful. We do believe that in certain local authorities where they abuse that there could be dire consequences. But I think for the most part, where there are decent local authorities, and let's hope that the training produces more decent local authorities and not more small-minded ones. Hopefully it need not be as bad, and let's hope as many of us can get involved to inform, to feedback, and constantly just keep working on whoever you can, work on the MPs, work on your councillors particularly, because a lot of what gets done will be through your councillors, your local council, and it does not have to be awful for everybody. And I know many local authorities, it wouldn't sit right with them, but they will obviously be required by law to carry out certain things. But let's try and be hopeful, but also be active. I think that's the most thing, is be active, but be hopeful, be positive, and
and to speak up for this is a time where everybody who's kind of involved in any kind of activism, and if you're watching this, you're probably somebody who might be fine, might be able to do the reports, might be able to manage the home visits, that's great, but whether or not you've come to home education now or 20 years ago is irrelevant. It's a right in this country, and a right that is there for lots of really good reasons. And we have to protect the most vulnerable and the weakest within our community, because that's all of our responsibilities. So it's not just about, oh, we'll probably be okay. It's about the family down the street who would struggle to write the report or would struggle to put into words what they do. And you could have one home educator you could have identical home education lives, and one family will be able to say it in a way that will make it really clear, all the educational content, and another family that might make it sound like they're not doing anything. So it's really important that we do this not just for ourselves, but for everybody in our community, and for those that might not have the words, might not have the language, might not have the confidence, that we speak up for those who might not be able to reach out to their MP, who might be completely overwhelmed with everything. So I just guess I really want to encourage all of us that if you've got a voice and you're able to use it, don't just use it for you, use it for everybody, because that's how community works, isn't it? That we all look after each other.
And we've got some great comments from Anne. So Anne said older teens can also remind their MP that they will be able to vote at the next election and will remember forever how they voted in relation to the CWS bill. And also another helpful reminder from Anne that council elections are coming up in lots of counties in May. So this would be a good opportunity to send a message. So I think, we've got to use the tools we have at our disposal as much as possible. But we've gone on way longer than we ever do in this live. We've had really good engagement, and I just want to thank everybody for their comments and their questions. I hope that has been helpful. I hope it has explained in a clear way, because we don't want to kind of be too sensationalize everything, but we hope it is clear what we're expecting. But remember that some of these things may change again with the ping pong process between the two houses. So thank you to Randall for joining us earlier, and thank you to Jen as well for joining and not leaving me to be Billy No Mates. And I think that will be it for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. And remember that we are live every Friday at 8 p.m. In these different places on Facebook and on YouTube.